We won the popular vote by big numbers and won counties in our country. And won counties in our country, 2,700 to 525, on a map that reads almost completely red for Republican. Now, for the first time in modern history, more Americans believe that our country is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction. In fact, it's an astonishing record, 27-point swing, the most ever. Likewise, small business optimism saw its single largest one-month gain ever recorded.
Mr. President.
A 41-point jump.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House and to cease any further disruptions. That's your warning. Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session. Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber. Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House. Mr. President, you continue.
And still I rise. And I rise to explain why I did what I did. And I did it with intentionality. The President indicated that he had a mandate. I said to the President, you do not have a mandate to cut Medicaid. I have constituents who need Medicaid. They will suffer and some will die if they don't get Medicaid. I heard the speaker when he said that I should cease. I did not, and I did not with intentionality. It was not done out of a burst of emotion. I was emotional about it, but I did it with intentionality. I think that on some questions of conscience, you have to be willing to suffer the consequences. And I have said I will. I will suffer whatever the consequences are, because I don't believe that in the richest country in the world, people should be without good health care. I stood up for my constituents then. I'm standing up for my constituents now. I am grateful to Mr. McGovern for what he has said. I'm grateful to those who have been standing with me. But I will tell you, I appreciate you. No anger. The officers who escorted me out, they were kind to me. I don't blame the speaker for anything. Friends, I would do it again. I have to be candid with you. I'm not trying to in some way insult you. This is a matter of principle. This is a matter of conscience. There are people suffering in this country because they don't have health care. I'll close with this. On some issues that are matters of conscience, it is better to stand alone than not stand at all. This is where I stand. I yield back. I rise today to acknowledge, driven by conscience, what the world is witnessing as we see the collective punishment being imposed upon Palestinians in Gaza. I rise to say that this level of punishment is something that is intolerable and has to be addressed. I rise to say that not only is there collective punishment, there is ethnic cleansing taking place in Gaza. I rise to say that at some point, we in this Congress have to take a stand against the injustice being perpetrated against innocent Palestinian men, women, and especially children. This level of injustice is something that this country has always stood against, but we find ourselves today standing with Mr. Netanyahu and the government that is bringing shame to the country of Israel. Israel should never do what it despises. I believe that the country of Israel would despise this level of punishment, this level of injustice being perpetrated upon another country. Yet we find today that Mr. Netanyahu, under his leadership, Israel is gaining a reputation as a pariah country. I rise today because our country is nearing a moment of decision. I rise because we are at the intersection of democracy and autocracy. I rise to announce that at this moment in time, I have filed HRES 537. HRES 537 is a privileged resolution. HRES 537 has been filed because I believe that the President of the United States has committed an impeachable act. HRES 537 addresses abuse of presidential powers by disregarding the separation of powers, devolving American democracy into an authoritarian government, usurping congressional power to declare war. Mr. Speaker, I take no delight in what I'm doing. I do this because I love my country. I do this because I understand that the Constitution is going to be meaningful or it will be meaningless. I do it because I understand that the President of the United States of America has a duty to consult Congress before taking this country to war. I do it because no one person should have the power to take over 300 million people to war without consulting with the Congress of the United States of America. I do this because if I do not, this authoritarian president that we currently have will continue to assume power. He has already instigated an assault on the citadel of democracy, the capital of the United States of America. He went so far as to pardon the persons who were actually involved in the assault. He has denied persons due process of the law. I believe that if we do not take immediate action, this authoritarian president will not only devolve the country into authoritarianism, I believe he is a would-be dictator who would become a dictator. So I today announce that later today, I will bring these articles of impeachment to the floor, and I will call for a vote. I believe that the hour of decision is upon us, and we all have to decide, are we going to go down and choose the path of democracy, or we allow ourselves to choose the low road of autocracy? I believe that this country has come too far to allow a single person to declare war without conferring with the Congress of the United States of America. This is where I stand. This is what I will do, and I do it in the name of my country that I love dearly. The form of the resolution is as follows. H-Res 537, impeaching Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. In the House of Representatives, June 24, 2025, Mr. Al Green of Texas submitted the following resolution. Resolution impeaching Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Resolved that Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the Senate. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America, and in the name of itself and the people of the United States of America, against Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, in maintenance and support of his impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. Article 1, abuse of presidential powers by disregarding the separation of powers, devolving American democracy into authoritarianism by unconstitutionally usurping Congress's power to declare war. In his conduct of the office of President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States, and to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, abused the powers of the presidency when he disregarded the doctrine of separation of powers by usurping Congress's power to declare war, and ordered the United States military to bomb another country without the constitutionally mandated congressional authorization or notice to Congress. Cognizant of the fact that should another country's military bomb a facility within the United States of America, it would be a de facto declaration of war against the United States of America. On June 12, 2025, the State of Israel initiated attacks on Iran, ostensibly to target sites and individuals of importance. to Iran's nuclear program, Iran retaliated, and the conflict has escalated between Israel and Iran. Though at no point did Iran pose any imminent threat to the United States. On June 21, 2025, President Trump announced successful attacks on 3 nuclear sites in Iran: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, via his social media network, Truth Social. President Trump has failed to seek prior congressionally mandated authorization for the use of military force. Congressional leaders were not appropriately briefed or notified of the attack plans, despite foreign leaders being given advance notice of the planned U.S. military action. President Trump's unilateral, unprovoked use of force without congressional authorization or notice constitutes an abuse of power when there was no imminent threat to the United States, which facilitates the devolution of American democracy into authoritarianism, with an authoritarian president who has instigated an attack on the United States Capitol, denied persons due process of the law, and called for the impeachment of federal judges who ruled against him, making Donald J. Trump a threat to American democracy. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution grants Congress the sole power to declare war. Quote, "The Congress shall have the power to declare war," end quote. At the time, the framers of the Constitution emphasized the goal of limiting the monarchical power of any single individual person to take a country to war over personal whims and preferences. No constitutional exception exists for a successful military action. In starting his illegal and unconstitutional war with Iran, without the constitutionally mandated consent of Congress or appropriate notice to Congress, President Trump acted in direct violation of the War Powers Clause of the Constitution. President Trump has devolved and continues to devolve American democracy into authoritarianism by disregarding the separation of powers and now usurping congressional war powers. In all this, Donald J. Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in a manner contrary to his trust as president, has become a threat to American democracy, subverted our constitutional government, and devolved democracy into authoritarianism, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice, and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Wherefore, Donald J. Trump, by such conduct, warrants impeachment and trial and removal from office. I yield back the balance of my time.
Under Rule 9, a resolution offered from the floor by a member other than the majority leader or the minority leader as a question of the privileges of the House has immediate precedence only at a time designated by the chair within 2 legislative days after the resolution is properly noticed. Pending that designation, the form of the resolution noticed by the gentleman from Texas will appear in the record at this point. The chair will not, at this point, determine whether the resolution constitutes a question of privilege. That determination will be made at the time designated for consideration of the resolution.
Let's see. On this vote, the yeas are 344, the nays are 79. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Mr. Chairman, the great Victor Hugo reminds us that there is nothing so strong as an idea whose time has come. But I would say that there's nothing so wrong as a bad idea whose time has come. For now some 100 days, we've had to suffer bad ideas. 100 days in, and the president, with the aid and comfort of my colleagues across the aisle, have decapitated the CFPB. It would be more appropriate to call it now the FPB, Financial Protection Bureau. The financial community will receive greater protection than the consumers. I have evidence of this. We find that on yesterday, the American Banker published this story. It is styled, "Wells Fargo exits another consent order and is asset cap next." Goes on to indicate that Wells Fargo took the latest step out of regulatory purgatory on Monday when the bank said that a 2018 consent order with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau had been terminated. Wells Fargo had agreed to a $1 billion penalty. That seems to be in question. There are other banks as well. 100 days in, and you didn't stop there. You replaced independent regulators with dependent deregulators. There's an effort afoot to remove Chair Powell. The only thing that stands in the way appears to be the stock market. You didn't stop there. You've, within 100 days, made an effort to turn our democracy into a plutocracy with executive orders, ruled by executive orders. With DOGE, a department that is not a department because the president can't create departments, with DOGE and a man with a chainsaw cutting into various agencies that benefit people greatly by removing personnel that cause the agencies to function efficaciously. So within 100 days, we've experienced all of these executive orders that are adverse to the best interests of consumers and the American people. So Mr. Steele, you mentioned something about a separation of powers. I'm intrigued with what you said because, quite candidly, I don't think rule by executive orders is what the framers of the Constitution intended. Would you elaborate for just a moment on your commentary, please?
Thank you, Congressman. I'd be happy to. Yeah, I mean, the way the president is governing out of the White House, Office of Management and Budget, also the DOGE, as you mentioned, is trying to override the law by executive fiat, essentially. And it's bad for the public, Trying to shut down the CFPB illegally is bad for consumers, but it's also bad for Congress. You all wrote these laws, you enacted them, you passed them, and this administration is trying to ignore a lot of these, either through executive orders saying, ignore the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. AIPA says whatever I say it means. He's really trying to seize the power of this body back for himself and say the law is whatever he says it is.
Thank you. I will be bringing articles of impeachment soon because the president is devolving our democracy into a de facto dictatorship wherein he would be the de facto dictator. We have to take a stand. People need to know where you were when democracy was at risk, when the country that we know was literally being transformed into a country that we don't want to know. I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Speaker, to add insult to this grave injury, the United States of America is aiding and abetting by and through President Donald John Trump, aiding and abetting by simply having him conclude that somehow Gaza should become a resort of a sort, and that the Palestinians would be moved to some other place. That is a form of nouveau ethnic cleansing. I do not support it. And I want the world to know that if in this bill, this big, beautiful bill that the president would have us sign off on, that I'm already antithetical to, but if there is money in that bill to support the continued ethnic cleansing, the continued inhumanity that's taking place against the Palestinians, I cannot support that. I will not vote to send more money to see innocent men, women, and especially children slaughtered the way it is taking place right before our very eyes. And the unfortunate thing is, there are too many among us who are afraid to speak up. Well, I refuse to be among those who at this time of challenging controversy, who will sit and cower. I'm going to take a stand, not because it benefits me personally, but because conscience says we cannot allow these injustices to go unpunished. Driven by conscience to say that I won't be supporting sending any additional dollars to Israel, having already sent and voted for more than $50 billion. Nobody can accuse me of not being a supporter of Israel. I've supported it. But I can't support the Netanyahu administration and what it's doing to the country of Israel, and I can't support what's happening in my country as our president would embrace this ethnic cleansing. This is the hour of decision. This is a time for every person of goodwill to make a decision. I stand for peace in Palestine and a two-state solution. There are those who say that there is no plan for the interregnum, what we call the day after. Mr. Netanyahu does have a plan. It is to take all of Palestine. It is to take all of Gaza. It is to take the West Bank. He has a plan. Don't assume that because he's going in without our permission that he doesn't have a plan. He does. My plan is to vote against any additional funds to the state of Israel. I yield back the balance of my time.